In emergency management, the definition of a stakeholder is any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival or recovery of a given community.
This is the Stakeholder Prepping Podcast, where the tactical comes from the practical, and today, you become your own stakeholder.
Here are your hosts, Chris and AC.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you are the stakeholder in your own survival. And today we are stepping into a space most people don't really realize they're already living in. The airspace above their homes, their communities, and the places they gather. We're talking about the drones that have moved from hobby toys into serious tools. And with that shift comes a whole new set of risks, rules, and realities.
Yeah, and our guest today works right in the intersection of all that technology, from the law and the real world security. So Logan Harris from Spotter Global is here, and he's going to join us, and we're going to talk about sort of all things drones and UAS from not just a technology standpoint, but from a security and a deterrent standpoint, which I think is the thing that a lot of our listeners have asked us about. That anybody can tell you about drones and what's the best DJI tool to buy and stuff like that, but not a lot of people can really talk about the deterrent. And I think that's what scares a lot of people is, what happens when this flies over my home, or I'm at the ball game and I see one that's not allowed to be there and things like that. So anyway, Logan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited about having this conversation.
Well, we appreciate it. And before we get into, radar and regulations and everything that comes along with it, who are you when you're not working? What pulled you into this world in the first place? Can you kind of give us the 5 to 10 minute elevator pitch about who is Logan Harris?
Yeah. So what pulled me into this whole arena was 9/11. Before that, I was chief technology officer for this company, developing and producing radars for monitoring traffic flow on freeways and highways and intersections. They're all over the world at this point. You'll see these little white boxes off to the side of the freeway, 20 feet up a pole. Those are radars. Um, and they're measuring traffic flow, how things are going at intersections. They're seeing where the cars are so they can turn the lights faster. So that's where I got started in radar. I was, electrical engineer, did a bunch of different jobs. Oh my gosh, I've done all kinds of things. I've done home automation. I've developed mass spectrometers for, measuring chemical composition. I've done fiber optic lasers for TRW. So I worked at IBM. So I've done quite a few different things. But then what brought me to the path where I am right now was when 9/11 happened. The government put out all of these broad area announcement things asking for, ideas for how we can defend the United States better. And that's where, we as engineers started to come up with all these ideas, and myself and this other RF engineer, he had done some research for his master's program for what's called a synthetic aperture radar, which is a radar that creates pictures. You put it on a plane or a drone, and you fly it by and seen, and it sees through the clouds and the dust, and night doesn't matter, and it'll create pictures that you can look at and say, okay, yeah, it looks like we got a tank down there. So it's something the military wanted. So that's where I transitioned from doing radar for traffic flow for, Department of Transportation and, transportation type things, moved into defense with that. And then we built really small radar for SAR. And to give you an idea, we went from the next closest synthetic aperture radar was 100 pounds, and we took it down to 2 pounds. So
Holy
huge
cow.
revolution in terms of
Crazy.
side weight and power. And then DARPA heard about that, and they came to us and said, well, we got these guys, these special forces guys that are going out to these villages in Afghanistan and Iraq that need protection. They need wide area surveillance to know where, potential threats are coming from, but it can't be big. And at the time, they have the ground surveillance radars used by the military. Again, they're the same thing, about 100 pounds on these huge tripods. You got to have a couple techs to run it, big, bulky, expensive, takes a lot of power. Not practical for us, group of special forces going out to this little village in a safe house or an outpost. And so that's where I said, yeah, I think we can do that. We got a little money from DARPA. We built a prototype. It worked really good. And then at that point, I said, okay, I wanted to go focus. So the main company still in business, focusing on the air side of things. I took ground and spun out and started Spotter back in 2009, and we went into production. So in September 2009, we went into production and started shipping our first units downrange to the Special Forces in January of 2011. And here we are, another 16 years later, doing all kinds of different things. We went into drones pretty quickly. In 2010, people were saying, "Well, we got these small drones in the battlefield. They're starting to come out. Can you track those with your radar?" Like, yeah, point it up in the air. Let's do it.
Very cool. So by small drones, are you talking about like the Raven size drones, or are we
Yep.
talking
Yeah, the
Reaper?
AeroVironment at the time was just getting started. So yes, they had the Ravens, but these small fixed wings at that time, 2010, DJI wasn't around. And so it was mainly these small fixed wing type drones were just coming into the market. And they were concerned about those because, yeah, they could see, someone could be doing surveillance on them. And typical radar isn't going to pick those up.
Okay,
Wow.
very
Yeah.
cool.
So I would like to know, because people have in their mind what a drone is capable of, and we're all watching the news right now and seeing what these little sort of COTS drones are doing in Ukraine. But for people that really just haven't thought about this before, what can a drone actually do that makes it a real security concern to everybody?
So there's two main aspects. One is surveillance. The second is delivering a payload. Those are the two things that it can do, and all kinds of different payloads. Right? Could be good payloads, deliver your pizza, or deliver some C4 explosive with precision. To any target. Now, what's been amazing is how capable now these drones are, uh, and and so when you're talking about surveillance, yeah, you can buy, for a $500, drone, you can go off of Amazon or Best Buy, grab it off the shelf for a $500, investment. Now you get a drone that can fly a couple kilometers. It can stay up in the air for 20 minutes. It has a 4K camera with like a 30x optical zoom. I mean, you can be up higher than you can hear it or see it, and they can be watching you. That is very capable at a very low price.
So
um,
we're not just talking about the prank level stuff. We're talking about serious criminal and safety risks across the board.
yeah, and it's already being used for that. I mean, on a daily basis, almost prisons. you know I, I I was joking with this guy in the prison. It's like they're getting better delivery, via drones than we are. You know, Amazon hasn't quite figured it out yet, but hey, they're doing drops into the prison every single day. I mean, there was, kind of the humorous side. There was a article that went out just before Christmas where a drone with steaks and lobster, or it was crab and cigarettes and everything was delivered by a drone into the prison. And so they're just ordering it up, and whatever they need, poop, get dropped into the prison. Now, of course, you could think about, okay, what else can you drop? If you can drop a couple pound steak in, weapons, drugs, obviously, and that's just prisons. But now, in domains that we also work in, critical infrastructure, the things that hold our society together, you know, power, water, data. Now, those things are also uh, open to disruption as well. And if you can think of, okay, well, what do you need to bring in to, a substation to disrupt it? It's not a whole lot. And now you got all that open space. So now all of a sudden it's you've got this wall, and this wall is maybe 10 feet, but now you got another, you know, thousands of feet that you've got to defend. And what are you going to defend? How are you going to defend that critical, substation from a drone attack?
You're
What are
talking
you going
about something like the Metcalf attack, right?
Yes. So, and Metcalf, that changed our business, directly,
Okay.
about kind of our story of how we got here. If you're familiar with the Metcalf attacks, which sounds like you are, a couple guys with rifles, uh, few hundred yards away from the substation, shot up the transformer, caused tens of millions of dollars of damages in 10 minutes. They didn't get any video of them because they were so far away. And and then that right there led us into critical infrastructure because we were just primarily military before that. And then when that happened, all of the electrical utilities had to start thinking about far beyond their fence line. And now we're on the majority of the critical substations around the United States, looking with our radars and queuing cameras and setting alarms and things like that, looking for those type of threats.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
I read some the work by Dr. Jennifer Hesterman about Metcalf, and she had said, yeah, it was like if you if you took down the right 9 substations, then the whole grid just cascades, right? Like it's that critical and it's that vulnerable. And you're right, this was a kinetic attack within whatever it was, a few hundred yards or, maybe even up to 1,000 yards. But when we start talking about drones, now we're talking about something that is much further away, right? I mean, so a standard off the shelf drone, if I go buy it as an operator, how far away from where I control that can I actually fly that? Let's say we're picking on DJI a lot just because they're the Kleenex, but that level of drone, how far away can I fly that as an operator from my base station?
And you can like for instance a Mavic,
Hmm.
which is a 1 kilogram, about a so a little over 2 pound drone. Uh, you can fly that for several miles,
Wow.
and I mean that's just a small one. And so when you get up to the bigger ones, like the M50, now you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 7 miles range out and back.
And what
So
kind of payload are we talking with that?
yeah, and so the bigger ones like the M50 now, because those are built to take a serious payload, like a large camera system or other payload. So those can start delivering, like 5 6 pounds to target, from 5 or 6 miles away. So you could be in the next city and fly one of these things over and drop it in with precision within a few feet of where you want it to be.
So I have some questions about a lot of people I think are like, well, don't we just put up GPS denied barriers or zones? Can't these drones just not go into those areas because out of the box we can set up these little mini drone TFRs and they can't get in there? What are people hacking these drones, or is there a way to fly them without GPS?
There are, and there's a couple of different things that's happened just this last year. Uh, DJI had those NFRs, those no-fly zones.
Hmm.
They would automatically stop you, but they disabled enforcement of that. So now any DJI drone can fly into NFR without restriction. Um, so even though they're there and they might pop up a warning, they won't even stop. So part of this back and forth about DJI being banned in the United States, they just disabled that feature, and so now that's not even there either. So one, even just a commercial off the shelf isn't going to get stopped by one of those NFR, uh, you know, out there. It's free game. You can fly in, um, and so you've got to do something, more. And in addition to that, now there's the ability to fly by waypoints. Um, you can fly by video AI, so you don't even have to use GPS. And the latest thing out of Ukraine this past year has been fiber optically guided drones, which I call fog drones.
Yeah.
And those are not using any type of GPS. They're not using any type of wireless. It's a fly by wire uh, with a range of 60 kilometers.
Holy
It's crazy.
crap. So they have a 60-kilometer spool of fiber optic cable on the back of this thing, and it's spitting it out like a spider web.
That is correct. And
That's what, 40 miles?
That's
that is like
insane.
40 miles. And to kind of put it in perspective here, let me pull this up just so you can see um, how easy it is to do this. Oh, here, I'm going to share my screen here.
Oh, hey, we've never done that before. Here's a first.
Is this the first?
Yeah.
Here. Well,
Okay.
this really drives down the point here. So you can buy a FPV drone fiber optic kit from Alibaba for $160 to $371 with 30-kilometer range.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, and we're actually going backwards in technology when you think about that. This is like well, you can't tap the line between two cans of Campbell's soup. So that's secured tech, like that's really what we're talking about is going backwards in tech to defeat.
Going back to World War I, having a dog run through the pipe.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and then the thing about this is that you can easily get this. So this technology came from the battlefield to commercial in less than a year. That's what's really, I find really amazing is that, okay, now we got to worry about these as well, because, now anybody can buy this.
And unless you can find the source and cut the string for lack of a better term, but it's glass, so you have to hit it with some force.
Yeah. I mean, your best chance is to detect the drone and take it down kinetically. Somehow it's either drone on drone, shotgun, some way, laser, you got to shoot it down. I mean, you cannot jam this. It can't be sensed with an RF sensor, a sniffer, as it were. It has radar will work against it, or optical, but that has a short, kind of a very narrow field of view, so you don't have very much range or coverage with like a camera system. So really, you use radar for detection, and then you got to have some sort of weapon system to take it out.
That's crazy.
How realistic is it for a regular Joe person, just, your normal, average, everyday Joe, to buy and fly a drone that could cause mayhem, chaos, and problems?
Quite easy.
And quite easy. Scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being mass chaos. And
well, I
one
mean,
being
depends on how much chaos you want to cause, but I mean, as I was showing you, it's not too hard. Well, one, anybody can go and buy an off-the-shelf drone. That's just spend a few $100s and you're up and going pretty quick.
right.
Attach something to it, and you can start to cause mayhem and chaos. So and I was just reading a report that now about 12% of all people in the United States have a drone. So that's like 30 million drones out there.
That's crazy. More of us
So-
have drones than passports.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That's crazy. So let's talk about what you guys do, because I'm really interested in this deterrent, because I think there's so many people out there that's like, oh yeah, I'm going to hear one coming and I've got buckshot, so drones aren't a problem for me. But that's just not the case. So what is it that you guys do? Tell us about, let's get techie. Like, how does the radar work, and what are the cool things you can do besides just say, hey, there's a dot up there and I think it's not a bird? What are the other things that you can do with your tech?
So we have a couple different technologies that we use for kind of these commercial off-the-shelf drones. Since September of 2022, they have been building in what's called remote ID, and what that is it's kind of like a license plate for drones. Obviously, they're too small to be carrying license plates, but instead they broadcast this signal. In that signal, it has information about, and it's in real time. It says, okay, here's my GPS location. Here's my serial number, and here's the location of my operator. I've got one of those devices right here.
Wow.
It's, so this is our remote drone ID sensor,
So it's like
and
what, 10 inches square and maybe
yeah,
a
it's
couple
about
inches
10
thick?
by
Tiny,
9, and then a
tiny.
few inches deep. It's got an
Yep.
Ethernet port in the back where we communicate, provide power. You stick this up on a pole or on top of a building, and that listens. It has about a but with this standard antenna, it can pick up a signal out to in typical fashion 3 kilometers. So that's about 1.7 miles in radius. So it can cover a pretty big space. And what it does is it picks up that, and I can show you like a real system here. I'll switch over, share my screen again. Uh, let's see. I'll share here, and okay.
So they have this embedded telemetry data, kind of like a transponder, I guess. Then how easy is it to disable that? Are you seeing that? Are people disabling that, or is it pretty embedded? Is it hard to do on a commercial off the shelf drone product?
It's not too difficult if you're willing to fly without GPS.
Ah, so
Um,
that's it. If you want the GPS, you're probably going to be broadcasting
yes.
enough data to identify your drone.
Yeah. So if you turn the GPS off, then it doesn't have that GPS information to transmit. So most of the time, the commercial off-the-shelf drones, they use the GPS for stabilization. They use it for returning home. They use it for not running into things, right? So most people who are using that will do that with the GPS on. But if you disable the GPS, now it's not there, and you can still fly a drone without the GPS. But then it's a manual stick,
Sure.
but you can still do it. So in that case, it won't work for that. It will work though for those who aren't that sophisticated. So what I call it is the careless, the clueless, and the low end criminal. How many criminals commit crimes with their license plates still on their vehicle? I mean, it happens quite a bit.
Makes sense.
Uh, so here, like I'm just going. This is our one of our. This is our software that we use to collect all this data, visualize it, map it. And what I'm showing here is a drone that was flying, one of our drones right here. And you can see that it's got its ID, its remote ID. We're capturing that information. So it's kind of like we got a license plate, off the drone. And I can also pick up the operator. So let me turn that option in so I can see the operator as well, because that's what's really unique about when this works. Now you know where the operator is, and you can do it. So we say, find the pilot, stop the drone, because that's one of the things you can do right now. The police can do that. Security guards can do that. Because when you know where the operator is, you can take actions based off of that. So I can turn on and say, okay, let's turn on my drone pilot filter here, and I can see, oh yeah, well, there's the drone pilot operating. This is our building right here
So
where we're flying.
you're not detecting the drone pilot. The drone is telling you where its pilot is.
Yes, that is correct.
Got it. Okay, so it's got nothing to do with the radar seeing the drone pilot. The fact that, and you're not even, it sounds like you're not like intercepting that S2. You're not saying, hey, I'm getting the signal from that drone pilot. The drone is simply telling you where it is being operated from.
That is correct.
Got it.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you said 1.7 miles or whatever. Can I stitch these together? Can I drop like on a stadium, let's say, because it's rather large? Can I line the perimeter with these and put a number of radars and have them stitch together and sort of talk to each other?
Well, yeah, and that's what this software does is you can bring multiples, but with one of these, you can easily cover a stadium, uh, far past where you'd even really care about it. To give you an example, let's look at how many drones have kind of flown around in this area for the past. Let's see, let's go look over the past 2 weeks.
Because you've just had a
Um,
radar out there sniffing, and then you're taking this historical data, and you can just throw that up on your UI here, then,
Yep.
right?
I'm just capturing all that data. And now I'm looking back and saying, okay, for the last 2 weeks, how many drone flights have been there. And you can see here we've got a total. I guess, how many do you think we have in this neighborhood? Take a guess.
Where are we? Where are we located? Where are you
This
located?
this is in Orem, Utah.
Orem,
I'm gonna
Utah, and considering it's your building that you probably fly drones out of, 2 weeks, I'm going to say 80.
80.
Oh,
Okay.
I was gonna $1, man. I was gonna say way less.
Okay. Okay. We got 80 and we got way less. So let's see. Total here. We got 91. So you
Wow.
got really pretty close.
And those are unique drones. That's not multiple flights out of one drone. Is that unique?
Yeah, some of these are multiple
IDs?
flights. I'm taking a look at this here, and I'm seeing that, yeah, there's, like, if you look here, uh, we've got this pilot over here that was flying. This one was over here. Oh, I haven't turned all the drone flights on. Here, let me turn that on too. Okay, there we go. I was just showing you the drone pilots.
Interesting.
Uh,
Okay.
Here, I can turn off the, let me switch off the,
So for people that are
I
just
guess,
listening to this, we're obviously seeing your UI. It looks like it's web-based, and we kind of a map-based where you can overlay drones and pilots, and you can filter by all kinds of different things here. And it looks like, are you telling us specifically what like brand, what type, make, and model of drone we're looking at as well?
yeah, so that's the interesting thing about the serial number. They're coded as part of that serial number is like the make and model. So once you have the serial number, we can pull out, okay, say this is a Skydio, this is a DJI, this is a Parrot, this is a Altel. So yeah, you can pull
Oh.
that out.
Interesting. And so if I disable my GPS, you can still get that on your radar, obviously. And I'm assuming using, pixels on target or whatever, you can figure out about how large that drone is. But are people out there building a library? So just using radar data, you can kind of start to figure out what type or brand of drones these are?
That's a little bit more difficult to do with radar. So in this, with this technology, the remote drone ID technology, it's being broadcast and we can pull it out, and it's 100% accurate because we got the serial number off it, so we don't have any false alarms. With radar, it's a different technology and in some ways more reliable, but then it's more difficult to pull out which make and model this drone is. I mean, so from the perspective of radar, just think of it like early air traffic control radar, from World War II. You're broadcasting a signal, an RF energy out. It's hitting something, bouncing back, and then we're interpreting what that reflection was, and then we're pulling out kind of what changed. And what changed is what's moving. So that's what we know. And the resolution of a radar in the frequencies that we're operating in is like, you know, about 3 meters. Okay. So we can tell, where the target is within, 9 feet. Okay.
Got it.
So that's not going to give you really fine enough resolution to really resolve uh, much of that drone itself. So if we want to do things like, okay, check to see if it's got a payload or maybe how big it is or make and model. We can see some of that just by the amount of energy that's reflected, which we call the radar cross section. And that'll tell us how big it is. But then if we want more detailed information, that's where we need to use a different technology like what we're showing here with, we can automatically cue cameras onto target, and then they'll zoom in, and then we can get a, picture of that and say, okay, well, all right, using video AI, we can do a dual classification, but then we can also look at it and say, oh yeah, that's a pretty small drone that we got flying around there.
Interesting. Okay, so you'll slew to queue a daylight or a thermal camera or some combination of the two, and then yeah, there is AI that can be done where you'll actually say, oh well, that's a quadcopter versus a six rotor or whatever, and you can
Mhm.
start to classify those.
Yes.
And
So
there's an inherent delay just because of radar bouncing the signal in return. So you could theoretically miss if a drone is moving fast enough, if it's really cooking across the sky, you could theoretically miss it, right?
Not in the sense of like how long it takes, because it's traveling at the speed of light, so it's going traveling very fast. You know, you're
Okay.
talking the speed of the RF energy out and back is in terms of nanoseconds, like 1 billionth of a second, type scale. So that, but the other problem is just saying, okay, well, with a very fast moving drone, you know, are you able to keep up with it, keep the camera on target? So we can and that kind of relates to what we call the update rate. Um, with our technology, we use what's called volumetric persistent radar, which is where we're spending 100% of the time on target, like we flood the whole area continuously instead of like a pulse radar or electronically scanned array radar. Uh, and so we're updating the full field of view 8 times a second, so we can keep up with pretty fast targets.
Got it.
Okay.
So that's way faster than when I think about a traditional spinning magnetron-based radar that's like giving you, you know, 24 times a minute or something. You're talking about much faster refresh rates out of these solid state radars these days then,
Yeah,
huh?
128 milliseconds.
Wow, that is
So very
quick.
fast.
That's
That's
amazing.
it is. That's wild. So yeah, I'm looking at your UI. This appears to be web based. If someone wanted to say purchase a radar and use this in a property, what all do you need? I saw it just looked like a Ethernet cable on the back. Are these PoE type radars? Do they have very low power draw? What are we talking as far as setting something up in a sort of enclosed environment?
Yeah, so we try to use kind of like standard technology for networking and power, like what's called active power over Ethernet. That's pretty standard off the shelf type thing. Um, and if you're familiar with IP based camera systems, we use a lot of the same technologies, like a web user interface with the IP address that you can go and set it up, so you don't have to install software on your PC or things like that. So we are very much web based. In terms of setup, uh, for it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. But for if it's just remote ID, which is pretty simple because you don't have to, align the sensor because it's reading the GPS coordinates directly off it. Uh, that's that's pretty simple. You have a PoE switch, you run the cable out, you plug it in, you open up the IP address. Uh, we've got a new version that's coming out here shortly that has this kind of user interface built into it, so we don't even have to have a separate box. Um, and then you connect that IP into this system, and you can be up and running in, I'd say a couple hours.
And do we need the internet? If I just wanted to run this and say I have a mesh network or something on my property, do you need the interwebs for anything here, or can we just talk directly to radars and set this up sort of like an off-grid situation?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that differentiates us from some of our. We obviously we have some competitors that are doing like remote ID and others that are doing radar. But we were the first in when it comes to compact surveillance radar. We created this category, and since our customers were special forces and critical infrastructure, they had to be air gapped. So yes, the answer is you do not have to be connected to the internet to use this. This is totally self-contained. The the map interface that's cached locally on the device itself. You just have to download the map tiles and you have it. You know then you unplug from the internet and you never have to be connected to the internet again. So yes, in that type of security scenario, that's how we work. Now, obviously, we can also, you know, put it in the cloud too, but that's not necessary.
Very
That's
cool.
amazing. So tell me about. I want to know when we're not just talking about drones, but I imagine is this millimeter wave based, or this isn't like an XS band type radar thing, right?
It's a X band.
It is X
Um,
band. So
it is X
then,
band.
so detecting like ground targets, people on the ground versus dogs and deer jumping over my fence and things like that. What is your capability, and is it the same radar or is it a completely different radar?
Yeah, so it's using like for one, let's take a look. Here is target actual targets from our system, where we have both remote ID as well as radar systems. These I'm showing these red ellipses on this map that shows the coverage area of these radars. And then we are tracking, and I turned on all the tracks because before I was just looking at drones, but say now I want to look at other stuff, and I can see where vehicles were coming in here. Let me shut this down a little bit, and now I can see I've got these vehicles. Let's take a look at one of these in here, and I can see this track that left here at just after 5 o'clock, and I cued a camera on target. So I can see that that truck was leaving right there. I can see it going out, and that relates to that track, and I can do that in live. And so in that technology is obviously it's not remote ID; it's a radar. It's these small compact radar systems. Um, Here's one right here. Comes in lots of different flavors,
That's
including
tiny.
this one is 1.5 pounds. It takes 5 watts of power, so you can power it up off of solar. Uh, and we have versions of this that go all the way from like 150-meter range out to 600-meter range on a person with a 90-degree field of view. So if you think about that, a device this small can cover about 60 acres of space. So it's,
Wow. Wasn't
you
it
know,
wasn't it 5 episodes ago? Brandon Curran from BattleBox was talking about the indestructible 8-watt power supply.
Oh yeah, little solar panels, little kind of backpack indestructible solar panels. So you're talking about very low power draw on these, and how quickly could I deploy these? Let's say I wanted to go out to my property and set this thing up, and I want to detect people or deer or animals on my property and things like that. How quick is it for me to deploy this? And I don't know if you need to geolocate it or calibrate it so it's pointed in the right direction, but how quick can I do that?
So if you have the option that has like the built-in GPS and the built-in inertia, or it's called an IMU, inertia
Hmm.
measurement unit, so it can
Hmm.
automatically get its position, uh, it's basically plug and play. It turn it on, it knows where it's at, um, and you can very quickly go to just kind of like the basic tracking interface here. Let's go
Wow.
to one of these devices, and I'll show you what's built into the radar itself. Um, let's go to a radar here. Is entrance radar, and in this is the user interface for the radar itself. Like it says, it'll automatically acquire on boot its angle, its GPS if it's got that built in. Then you go to your tracker display, and this will just show you kind of like range and angle to target. And for the military people, this is what they use for these tactical situations where it's just turn on. I want to see a track, and I get range and angle to target. Um, so that right there is very simple. 5 minutes, you're up and going.
And does the radar know the difference between a person and an animal or something walking on all fours, or do we just see movement when we set this thing up?
Yeah, the radar doesn't. Well, we do apply radar AI at another level, but the radar doesn't do the classification. You can see speed, you can see direction, you can see kind of relative radar cross section, um, but like it's not 100% accurate on its classification. That's where you start to apply kind of different levels of classification algorithms, which we do in our command and control software, Networked IO, which I've been showing you here at this level, where it can start doing video classification, like we see here, where it's
Bringing in
using
other
video for it.
sensors at that point, right? You bring in
Yeah,
other
and
sensors and you can make it a lot smarter. But as is, do you know the difference between a bird and a drone?
yes, to a point. So the radar with the radar data using radar AI will get us to about 99% accuracy.
Wow.
Now that
Okay.
still means that there's 1% that are of birds that are getting misclassified as drones, are and are not drones. Um, and in a kind of suburban environment like this, and during the summertime, we can see 1,000 bird flights per day. So
Oh,
that means you're looking at misclassifications of five to you know like even up to 10 misclassifications with radar alone per day per radar system, which is why we implemented or developed an integrated system that also uses video AI to further classify. Now that can reduce that by 90%. So we go from 10 false alarms per day to a single alarm per day on birds.
So I want to talk about drones for a second here. I mean, a lot of people assume that if there's a drone over their house, they can just deal with it with a shotgun. And that's not really how the law works. So,
No,
where is that legal line between protecting your own personal space and crossing into federal trouble?
yeah. So uh, in pretty much all cases in the United States, um, it's not legal to interfere with a drone. Now, obviously, if your life is being threatened, and if you think about it, you go do something to protect your life or somebody else's life, and it goes to a trial. If you're going to be able to defend yourself, in a jury of your peers, you know, see what it is. But in terms of legality, um, you're not legally allowed to do anything against that drone. That's
So,
that's the law.
so what's the smartest legal move that a homeowner or farmer or small business owner can make if a drone just continually keeps showing up?
Yes, and that's where find the pilot, stop the drone. Because if you know where the
Interesting.
pilot is, you can call the police. The police can go out and deal with that drone operator. Like we did this for a large Fourth of July celebration. We were there monitoring the airspace. We shared that information with the local police. They had 4 drone flights over the stadium while the fireworks were going off, and they were able to go and intercept 2 of the drone pilots and bring it down safely. So that's one of the legal things. If you know where the operator is, then you can have the police or the security personnel deal with that threat in that fashion.
So I guess I've heard, because I think the rule is the laws, and I'm a 107 pilot, so I should know this, but whatever. I don't fly drones a lot, but that, yeah, if you can make contact with someone, you can actually trespass them or that drone, but you need to make contact with them. So that's where you come in, that you can aid in that. You can aid in that, making contact. So if you have drone ID and you can find out who owns that drone, like, does that count? Does that count as making that contact with someone and saying, hey, you're not allowed to trespass on my property, or those kinds of things?
I'm not really sure. I haven't seen a particular case for that, but I do know that once the police are able to intercept the drone operator, um, now they can access those trespassing laws or endangerment laws, because
Sure.
even if it's a new technology, you know, you're not legally allowed to uh, you know, you know, like peeping toms, that type of
Right.
thing. So they do have some legal recourse, and the FAA at the federal level has additional fines that they can impose up to $250,000.
Holy crap. And I get
That's
I get
that's a few drones.
yeah. And I guess there's also this whole, like, line of sight rule, right? Like, if you're a drone pilot, legally you're supposed to be able to see the drone. So I imagine that you can probably prove pretty easily whether or not someone could see that drone where
Oh
they
yeah,
were operating it, right?
yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, and I was just looking at this as I was looking. If we just looked at the drones again, uh, there was somebody that was flying from one side of the valley to the other. We were picking up, and it's like that's way beyond line of sight. Because line of sight is only maybe 600 or 700 feet before you lose sight of it.
Yeah, I guess I never even thought about that. That when we think of line of sight, like in the radar world or the camera world, that's much different from line of sight, as in I'm a drone operator and I can see my drone, isn't it?
Exactly. Like this guy over here, you see here's the drone pilot down, and they're flying. This is the drone. Sorry. And here's the drones. Here you can see the track. They flew all the way out. Sorry. Uh,
How far away are we talking about drone to
yes.
pilot here in this, what you're
This
showing us?
this this ellipse here, that's 1.5 kilometers. So that's a mile across. Or sorry, that's 750, 700. So yeah, that's a whole mile here, and they were flying from down here all the way up over here to this mountain, which is probably a good 2 miles away.
Interesting. So it'd be pretty easy for you to say, I know that person could not see that drone. They did not have line of sight.
Yeah, if they got farther than a few hundred meters, like 600, 700 feet, you can't see the drone. It's gone.
Yeah, interesting. So let's talk about, for the homestead or the, somebody who wants to actually help secure their own property. How do we work in things like, absolute pitch darkness or heavy fog, things like that? How do these X-band radars work in those kinds of environments?
Yeah, so the radar uh, is that's what it's made for, is to see through the rain and the fog and the dark. Um, Also, the remote ID is using Wi-Fi band, so it'll pick up at long ranges. So it's not really affected much by poor weather. That's one of the advantages about that. Of course, with cameras, that's another thing. If you're trying to cue a camera, and if it's rainy or foggy, even with thermal, it becomes the range shrinks very much so.
Now, how does the X band radar affect satellite communication with in terms of the actual X band communication satellite bands? I know my time in the satellite communications world, a lot of those channels are X band, but does it is it working on a different channel? Is it working on? Uh,
Yes.
it is okay.
Yeah, it's so we operate in a special band that's just for navigation. It's between 10 and 10.5 gigahertz. And so none of this, at least in the United States and most of the world as well, they don't do any satellite communications in that band.
Okay, I was gonna say that would really mess with your neighbor's HBO.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
I mean, really, they wouldn't even notice it there. We transmit at such a low power. To give you an idea, our highest power radar transmits at 1 watt of power. That's the transmit power, 1 watt.
Wow.
Your
It's
cell
very
phone transmits at 1 watt.
so it's a very huggable radar. These aren't the
Yeah,
radars that hard boil eggs or make you sterile. Or this is
no,
completely different tech these days.
no. This is so low power. It's in the noise. You know, it's
That's
not going to cook
awesome.
anything.
That is awesome. So, what's the most tense moment you've had involving kind of an unknown drone at a major public gathering?
Yeah, have you,
Well,
you ever thought that yes, you had the big one? It was happening.
yeah. I mean, that last one I was talking about. I mean, at the stadium, or where it was a big event, and the drones were flying over multiple times while the fireworks were going off. Uh, that was kind of a bit of a nerve wracking event, because it's like, okay, well, what if they got hit by one of the fireworks, or you know what if it went down, it's got a stadium full of people, and it was flying over multiple times. I think that's probably one of the most tense ones.
And so thinking about the technology in general, where do you see this going? Where do you see drone technology going? Obviously, we've started to get the Amazon drone delivery, and so I don't think UAS systems are going away, but you're probably more in tune with the laws they may be creating to stop some of that. Where do you just see the tech going and the industry going, say in the next 5 years? What are we going to see out of drones?
Yeah, so on the one side, on the drones, the drone capabilities are just increasing. I mean, Are we going to see drone taxis in the United States in 5 years? Maybe. I mean, we
Wow.
will see it in other countries. They're already testing it out, doing pilot projects like in the UAE, in Dubai, in China. Uh, drones in China is getting really huge. I mean, uh, they are developing that technology, the drone technology, very fast in China, and we're in the United States. We're trying to catch up uh, because of how fast that's moving. So what it means is, you know, drones that can carry people. So things like you can see some of these these startups that are developing these drones in essence that are pilotable by people with people in them. You've got a number of larger groups or companies like Joby that are doing these air taxis. So I see that drone based travel by people with actually humans riding in them is coming up in a very short order. And
Easy.
then of course the delivery. Sorry, I I could go on and on.
That's just nuts to me that, yeah, people are just gonna get in some unmanned quadcopter and go far enough off the ground that if they fell, they would die. So
Yeah,
that's
well, then you
nuts to
just
me.
stick a parachute on it. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
just like these little planes. They
Yeah,
have
just
built-in
like
parachutes.
yeah, Cirrus does that. You're right.
Yeah.
I guguess it isn't that crazy. So
No, no, and
let's
you think about it like in a congested and urban environment. I don't know if you've ever been to Brazil, but if you go to São Paulo or Rio, uh, the traffic is so terrible. It takes hours to get anywhere. And so if you can pay $50 to fly from one point of the city to the other in 10 minutes, it's worth it. Same thing going on into New York. Think about flying into JFK and then trying to get downtown Manhattan from JFK. That's an hour. Doesn't matter
sure.
what you do. If you've got to, you can't get into you can't get down into the city any faster than an hour at best. So if you're thinking you've got a drone taxi, business flying out of JFK into Manhattan, get you there in 5 minutes, and it costs you
Yeah.
$100. Yeah, there's a market there.
And so when we talk about, it sounds like in your world, you aren't talking, even with law enforcement, a lot about like actually taking these drones down. I know the technology exists just to bombard them with RF and knock them down, but is that something that legally we can do, or they're talking about it? Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. I see you've grabbed something like that right there. So there are these big RF bombardment tools, right, that we can knock them down with. Um, are those even legal for law enforcement at this point, or is that technology still coming?
It is available for if you've got the authority to use it, of course. But the laws are changing, and it's just happened in January. The National Defense Authorization Act was passed, and in that law, there's provisions for the federal authorities to train as part of a pilot project to train local law enforcement, state and local law enforcement, and if they are get certified, then they can use reasonable force to mitigate drones. That's happening now this year.
Wow. Okay. So that is coming in. How likely is it that will we see the technology to actually take over a drone and land them safely? Or are we just talking about knocking them out of the air and hoping they don't land on something important?
So there's two levels of jamming. One is you jam the control signal from the base station where the pilot's at. That's usually at a different frequency. It's usually Wi-Fi or maybe Bluetooth, and so it's 2.4 gigahertz or 5.7 gigahertz. You can jam that, and without jamming the GPS, and most all commercial drones knew where they took off from, and so they'll return to that position once they no longer can talk to a control station. They go back. So that's level one jamming. And that level one jamming is the most, that's the first thing to start with. It doesn't jam the GPS. The drone's not going to fall out of the sky, and it's going to go back home, and you can actually go follow that and see where it goes and find the operator, right?
Okay.
So there's that. That's level one. Level two is jamming the GPS, because most of these drones that are wireless, of course, they're using GPS, if they're being flown FPV drones, then that, of course, those will just come down. But most of them aren't. Most of them are using GPS. When you jam the GPS, then it no longer knows where it's at, and it will come down. Usually not at a very fast rate, but it will just kind of, circle down and drift and hit the ground.
Okay.
That's when you can hijack it interstellar style.
Well, that would be really nice, right? Well, and there are some. It's getting less able. There are some companies that try to basically intercept the C2 signal and hijack it, like you're saying, and then
Yeah.
control it. But that's getting more and more difficult to do because they're putting higher levels of encryption now on that
Oh,
C2. So that's becoming pretty difficult,
interesting.
if
So
not impossible.
that's becoming more difficult, not less difficult as technology. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
We are coming up at the end of the hour, so I want to give you a chance to really plug yourself and what you do. And I want to talk a little bit about cost. I mean, we actually have a lot of listeners that have asked us about this, about, I'm worried about drones. I'm worried about them coming on my property. And obviously there seem to be a lot of myths out there about people just assume I can see them, I can hear them, I can take them down myself. I feel like there's a scary amount of myths out there, but for someone that wants to do things the right way and track drones that are coming onto their property, what can I do? How can your company help? And what realistically is that going to cost if I want one of these fast, easy deployable radars for a large piece of property?
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, for the most part, we're a bit too expensive for the kind of the middle America.
We have some very irresponsible listeners.
Yeah.
We do.
So yeah, so so to kind of give you an idea, one of our low ends, radars starts at $6,000 and it goes up from there. Um, and, and so we're kind of, most of our customers are critical infrastructures, military, those type of things, primarily due to the cost. Um, that being said, if you've got a large facility that you're needing to protect, and that's something where there's a lot of risk involved, then yeah, we have started offering even lease options for those who are operating out of operating budgets. So you could get set up with a system with a remote ID, um, this type of software that I've been showing, for about $400 a month.
Wow. I mean, I was thinking you were going to say 10 grand. So it's actually not that crazy for what you get. I mean, the ability to actually stop the unstoppable, really, right? That you can actually detect the undetectable with technology like that. Because for people that think that, I can hear a drone coming, or in the middle of the night, I'm going to be able to somehow track this and take it down without using high tech like this, it's just kind of a myth. And I think you have helped us put that to bed. So that is really interesting. And so in that sort of, you've got a small radar, obviously, that's quick deployable, and you've got your software that I guess you're not even loading software on a machine, right? You're just going and talking to the IP address inside
Yeah,
that
just talk to
radar, right?
it's a web browser, so you bring it up
Yeah.
on your phone, wherever.
So you could bring it up on your phone or tablet based things like that.
Yeah.
And have you done any, or been asked to, have you done any integration with TAC or ATAC at all?
Yes, our main interface uses cursor on target is the protocol, and our software outputs cursor on target. So yes, we could push this same track data live to ATAC systems.
Wow. So if I'm already using ATAC on my property, I could just, this is a simple plug and play, and I could bring up
Absolutely.
any of the drone activity or any of the land-based target activity into my ATAC system.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
See, all you need is one of these systems linked to your own personal CRAM, and you can knock out anything in the air.
That's crazy. Yeah, no, this it really is really interesting. And hopefully, obviously, this is very video heavy. And I really appreciate you sharing your screen and showing us what you're doing, because this is something that I think people are going to listen to this, and then they're going to have to go back and say, I want to know what they're actually looking at right now, and go check out the
It's a little bit
YouTube
more, a little bit more information there. If you could look at the screen.
Definitely. This is a YouTube this is a YouTube video for sure.
Yeah,
So
100%.
if you are only listening on Spotify, definitely visit our YouTube channel. You're going to love this video, and it's fantastic just to see all of the UI that is going into this video. But Logan Harris, we definitely appreciate you coming on. Do you have any questions for us before we let you on with your evening?
Okay, well, just when are you going to ask me back on?
Yeah, hey,
When do you want to come back on?
we're always excited to talk about new tech, and I think this is tech that a lot of people, tinfoil hat crowd or not, are very interested in what's going on in the UAS space because it is an emerging technology, and we're kind of on the front side of this wave right now. So I think a lot of us don't know what we're going to see in the next 5 years. But yeah, we're absolutely excited that, keep us abreast of what you have going on, and we would love to share that with people.
Yeah, I mean, let's do it again in a few months from now, because there's a lot of stuff happening. I mean, after the FIFA World Cup, they're going to be deploying a lot of this counter drone type equipment. It'd be good to kind of do a roundup after that and see, what all happened with it.
For sure. I do have one final question. Can your systems detect UAPs?
UAPs, not
UAPs.
UAVs.
The
Sorry, are you talking
unidentified
about
aerial.
UFOs? Is
Yes,
that what you're
yes,
saying?
that's what we used to call them. We used to call them UFOs, but now
Yeah.
it's UAPs. Yeah.
UAPs now?
Yep.
Well, if it's a moving target within our range, then yes.
Perfect.
Now, are we going to see something at, hundreds of kilometers away? No.
I actually have, regarding that, I do have one saved around when we talk about stealthiness, because we all know that, you can hide from radars using stealth technology. Is that something that we're seeing in the UAS space, or are these radars just operating at a refresh rate or a resolution that it's harder to stealth because these are small targets?
Yeah. And I mean, we're not seeing stealth yet. And even the drones that do have some stuff technology that they're using your crane, they're trying to, low profile, still, if you're looking up from the bottom up, we can still see them. But that again, the future things are going to, it's always measure, countermeasure, back and forth, and it's always going to be an arms race. So as we get more sophisticated with our detection technology, somebody's going to start to come up with a different way to try to defeat it. So yeah, it'll come.
Awesome. I'm excited for when you can detect a Mach 2 bumblebee.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's pretty good. Mach 2 bumblebee would be great for us to track.
Well, Logan Harris, we appreciate you coming on. We'll let you on with your evening. And listeners, as always, we will go on with a new topic next week. But until then, remember, you are the stakeholder in your own survival. We'll see you then.